Exodus chapter 19 is where we are at. We've been in Exodus for 18 chapters now. It's our 19th chapter. We're working our way right through it. And this is all about them at Sinai, a place called Sinai. Not cyanide, but Sinai. And there are 5 main divisions. Those of you that like to take notes, 5 main divisions: arriving at Sinai, ascending the mountain at Sinai, obviously, because that's where they're at, an agreement at Sinai, alerting the people, and then approaching Sinai. So we will get right into the first section, I think. If we can get this, there it is. Arriving at Sinai, which is just the first couple of verses to give us our start here. In the 3rd month, after the children of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on the same day, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. So you'll notice that they have been traveling now for 3 months. This is the 3rd month, okay? And they get to this place called the wilderness of Sinai. And in verse 2, we see them simply, real simple, they're setting up camp. For they had departed from Rephidim, a place called Rephidim prior to this. They had come to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. So Israel camped there before the mountain. It's important to remember that God is the one that's directing them step by step. We were told early on in Exodus that he would lead them by night in a pillar of fire, and during the day in a pillar of cloud. And he would direct Moses, and Moses would lead the people, and they would go wherever God led. That's how God chose to lead them. So he gets them now right at the base of the mountain there in Sinai, the wilderness of Sinai. There are mountains there. There's a specific mountain that they're at. And they set up camp there. We move right into our second section, which is ascending the mountain. So at that point, they're all set up. Verse 3, and Moses went up to God. Now, why did Moses go up to God? Well, it says there in verse 3, and the Lord called to him from the mountain. So that's why Moses went up. Moses didn't just see a mountain and walk up and figure, well, God must be up there. But actually, God called to him and told him to come on up, directed him to come up. So in verse 3, the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the children of Israel. So what is about to happen here for the rest of the chapter? You're going to see this exchange between God and Moses. There will be other people involved, but generally what's happening is that God is speaking to Moses, or Moses is speaking to God. God's telling him, okay, go do this. Moses does it, then comes back and reports. And you'll see this exchange between the two, okay? Again, other people will be involved, but that's mainly what's happening. So it begins here in verse 3 with God saying to him, say to the house of Jacob and tell the children of Israel. Now, let me see if I can not confuse you. Jacob and Israel. So the house of Jacob and the children of Israel, those are actually one and the same. It's just 2 different names or 2 different phrases for the same individual. If you were here for our study in Genesis, you will know that Jacob was a man and that his name got changed to Israel by God. He didn't just change his own name, but God gave him that name, Israel. So Jacob and Israel, same people, just 2 different names that one of them was, again, his name was changed by God into Israel. So when God says this in verse 3, say to the house of Jacob and tell the children of Israel, he's talking about the same individual. Jacob and Israel, same individual. Now, here's where it gets even crazier. Jacob or Israel, same person, is not even alive anymore. He's been dead for many, 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 many years. So, has God lost it? Why is he talking to a dead man? Jacob, Israel, what is the problem? What is the deal? Well, here's the deal. Jacob, or Israel, same guy, had a bunch of sons. And those sons obviously had their own kids, family grew. And they eventually came to be known as the Israelites. His name was Jacob. It got changed to Israel. Well, his family, all of his descendants, were known as the Israelites. We know them today as the Jews or the Hebrews. Okay? Most often they're called the Jews now. But Israel, how many of you have heard of Israel? How many of you have heard of the country Israel? Okay, a few of you have. There's a country named Israel over in the Middle East, and Israel is filled with descendants from this guy Jacob, from this guy Israel. Remember, he's the same guy, Jacob and Israel. Just had a name change. But he's long gone. We still have a place called Israel, but he's long gone. So the idea is that all of his descendants make up the Israelites. So God here speaking to Moses tells him, I want you to go speak to all of the Israelites. Now, if you've not been here, here's what's going on. The children of Israel, or the Israelites, had been slaves in Egypt for about 300 years. And God rescued them, freed them from slavery by sending this guy Moses into Egypt to go free them from slavery. So once he freed them from slavery in Egypt, they started marching, started traveling. And all of these Israelites, they're all following Moses. So God leads Moses, Moses leads the people. That's how this works. So now what he's doing is he's saying, I want you to go down and talk to them. And here's the message in verse 4. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians. Now, what in the world did he do to the Egyptians? Well, he judged the Egyptians with 10 different plagues, disciplined them, judged them for rebelling against God. They totally rejected God. So God disciplined them for that. Verse 4, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians. Another thing that he did to the Egyptians, he drowned them all. God actually drowned them all in the Red Sea. So he destroyed the Egyptian army. All of the people that Moses is talking to, telling this message, they all saw that firsthand. They saw God do that. They witnessed that. So what he says in verse 4 is this. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. So he says, this is what I did to the Egyptians. You saw it for yourself. However, you also know that I put you on eagle's wings. Now, he didn't actually put them on eagle's wings. When I hear that, I always think of Lord of the Rings. When Gandalf was on the tower, remember? And what was it? Was it an eagle? An eagle come by? I think it was an eagle. Does anybody remember? It was an eagle. The eagle comes by and Gandalf goes jumping off and lands on the eagle. Yeah, there was the eagles. So I always think about that. But that is not what happened. This is a figure of speech. The point that God is making is, you saw how I judged the Egyptians, but I put you on eagle's wings, or I kept you above all the judgment. I kept you safe. You were soaring and brought you to myself. So I did this to the Egyptians. I saved you. I brought you to myself. I did all of these things. Okay? So God is pointing out to them, this is what I've done for you. I've taken good care of you. Verse 5. Now therefore means, because of that, because of what you just heard, because of what you've learned. Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. Now, this is conditional. Your parents might say to you, if you clean your room, I will take you to such and such a place. Or if you cut the lawn, then I will buy you this thing, whatever it might be. It's conditional. So I want you to take note in verse 5 that God is not forcing them. Like, here's what you're going to do, you better do it or else. He's given them an example. Here's how I judged the Egyptians, but I took care of you. Now, keep that in mind, because if you will, in verse 5, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant. In other words, if you will commit yourself to me, you'll obey me, you'll keep the agreement, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. This is an offer. You do not have to clean your room. I mean, maybe you do. But in those instances when mom or dad say to you, if you will clean your room, then I will do this for you. It's an option. Now, you are all smart enough to know that when mom or dad say, listen, if you clean your room, I'll take you to your friend's house. It sounds like an option. It sounds optional. It sounds like, oh, if I clean my room, well, I don't really want to go see my friend, so I'm not cleaning my room. That's not going to work, right? Because your mom or your dad is going to be like, you didn't clean your room, you're not going to your friend's house, get in your room and clean it. So you're still going to be busted, you're still going to have to clean the room. But with God, he's giving them an option. He's saying, listen, I saved you from Egypt. I'm providing freedom for you. I've got a place planned for you. If you will commit yourself to me, you'll be my special treasure. But you don't have to. You can walk away. You can make a decision against God and do your own thing. You and I have that same option. Now, maybe in your house, Christianity is like, no, you're going to church. You're going to do that. But at some point in your life, you will get old enough to make a decision against God. Some of you, sadly, will do that. Some of you are going to make that decision. If you've not made it already, you are going to make that decision. At some point in your life, you're going to realize, I'm old enough to make my own decisions. I don't have to listen to my parents anymore. And you will decide against God. And then you will go off and do your own thing. So God was not forcing them. He's giving them an option. It's an invitation. I like this. Let's go. Come with me. If you come with me, come hang out. Buy some Chinese food later for lunch. Okay? Those are the kind of things that my kids know about. Like, hey, you come and hang out with me. Man, I eat every day. I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And in between snacks. Because you got to eat, right? So my kids know that. If you come with me, you know you're going to get the hookups. Right? And I'll let you choose whatever you want to eat. If you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure. Now, the second part of verse 5 is extremely important for you and I to understand. And I've got to mention this as quickly as possible and then move on so that we don't get stalled out right here. I want you to know what God is saying. If you will obey my voice and keep my covenant. In other words, if you will commit yourself to me, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people. Now, I want you to note what he's saying. You will be my special treasure above all other people. You understand what he's telling the Jews? These Jews, these Hebrews, these Israelites? He's saying, you people will be special to me above all of the other people on earth. You'll be my special people. Now, that sounds to me like favoritism. And we don't like that. We're like, no, poo-poo on that. We don't do favoritism. You can't play favorites. Well, that is exactly what God does. That's exactly what he's saying here. He's saying to the Hebrews, if you commit yourself to me, you will be my special treasure above all people. A lot of people do not like that. A lot of people still do not like that. There are a lot of people who are angry right now, today in 2020, who are angry that the Israelites, the Jews, that they have control in Israel. A lot of people don't like that. They say, listen, it wasn't your land. It belonged to the Palestinians, and you need to get out. You and I need to understand that God gave them that land. That they are God's special people. A lot of people don't like that. Well, why are the Jews special people? Why are the Hebrews his special people? Well, we don't make that choice. God makes that choice. It's important for you and I to understand this. Why? Because if someone or something is special to God, then it ought to be special to us. If God said, in his word, we opened it up and we read in Genesis chapter 2. God said, I really love people in red pants. What would you and I do? You and I would buy red pants. We would wear red pants because we know that's what God likes. Well, God holds his people, the Jews. They're a special treasure to him above all people. Well, if they're special to him, then they ought to be special to us. well, not look down on them and be like, well, forget those people. They think they're God's people, or, they think they're whatever. It doesn't matter. God holds them as a special treasure above all other people. That's what he said in verse 5. I want you to notice what's missing in verse 5. Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people, for all the earth is mine. There's no timestamp on this. There's no turning this over and seeing an expiration date. Like when you go to get some milk and it's sour, you look at the date and it's like, oh, we should have thrown this out weeks ago. There's no expiration date. God did not make this promise once and for all and say, well, this is it, and, you can be my special people for 100 years. But he didn't do any of that. They are his special people, and they still are his special people. And that actually wasn't the first time. God had said the same type of thing to Abraham way back in Genesis chapter 12. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. Talking about the Jews. I'm going to take care of whoever blesses the Jews, I will bless those individuals. Whoever curses the Jews, I will curse those individuals. So God obviously has decided and declared that the Jews are his special treasure to me above all people. Again, some of us may not like that, but that's why God says in verse 5, right at the end, he tags this on. He says, for all the earth is mine. Listen. You've got clothing in your closet. You've got an outfit, an ensemble. Maybe it's a blouse and a skirt, or a top and some pants for the guys. Whatever it might be. Might be your favorite sweatshirt or whatever it is. When you put that on, you look good, right? You're like, man, when I wear that outfit, sizzle, right, I got a lot of cool clothes, but when I put that on, or those shoes, or that hat, or whatever, you feel like, man, yeah. Okay? Now, that might be your favorite. I might come along and say, that shirt is dumb. But it will not matter, will it? Because the clothes are yours. The clothes are yours, and you may choose whatever you want to wear. You can wear whatever you want to wear. I have no say. I didn't buy you the clothes. God says, I can make these people special above all others because the earth is mine. They're all my people, and I can choose whoever I want. We don't have a say in, we can voice our opinion and complain all we want, but God has made his decision. They're his special people. Now, I'm saying all of this because it's still a problem today in 2020. It's still a problem. They are his special treasure above all people. Now, does that mean that we are not special or that he doesn't love us? Well, what it means is the Jews are his special people. We are people, and we're special to him also, but the Jews are still his special people above all people, and the earth is his. He can decide to do whatever he wants. We just need to keep in mind that God loves the Jews, and so it's a good thing for us to love the Jews also. Verse 6 says this, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. See, they're being set apart. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. So he's told Moses, okay? Now, he goes on to say this. Did I put anything? Oh, I'm so sorry. If you're taking notes, ascending the mountain, Moses meets with God. That's obvious. Doesn't really have to be put up there, but let's go ahead and move on to our next section, which is the agreement at Sinai, verse 7. So Moses came and called for the elders of the people. So here's Moses. He's got this message. He comes back down. He calls for the leaders of the people, and he laid before them all these words which the Lord had commanded him. Goes back down, tells the people, this is what God says. If we do this, we'll be his special people. Then in verse 8, all the people answered and said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. So they submitted. The people submit to God. They say, yeah, we want to be his special people, so we will do. We'll be obedient to him. We will commit ourselves to him. So Moses brought back the words of the people to the Lord. Now let's stop for a moment. Pause right there at the end of verse 8. They arrived at Sinai. Moses goes up the mountain, gets a message from God, comes back down and tells the people. Okay? Now in verse 8, Moses has that message. He goes back to talk to the Lord, to tell him, hey, here's what the people said. So Moses got there, he went up, he came back down, now he's back up. And the Lord said to Moses, here's an exchange once again, verse 9. Behold, I come to you in the thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. So Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. So God tells us. I told you at the beginning we're going to see an exchange between Moses and God and back and forth. And they're not done yet. We're not even halfway through this. But there's this exchange going on. Now, why? What's the significance? Why is there a whole chapter about God and Moses talking back and forth? Here's why in verse 9 we get the answer. I come to you in the thick cloud, God says, that the people may hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. Forever. What God is doing is he is establishing the leadership of Moses. He's showing the children of Israel Moses is the leader. He's showing everybody, I lead Moses, Moses leads you. He's my spokesman. He's establishing that. Why is he establishing that? I want you to keep in mind this. They have been out of Egypt for how long? Does anybody know how long they've been out of Egypt? Anybody? How long?
2 months.
A little bit longer? What did it say right at the beginning? Verse 1.
Yeah, 2 months.
2 months. It says there, in the third month, after the children of Israel. You see that?
Well, it doesn't say that for mine. It says exactly 2 months after the Israelites left Egypt.
Huh, okay. Yeah, in the third month. Okay? So they've been out for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. Prior to that, they had been in Egypt all of their lives, in slavery. Because they had been slaves all of their lives, they did not know how to live in the outside world. They did not know how to use their freedom. Understand? They did not know how to use their freedom. The same thing happens with you and I. You do not give your 5-year-old, some of you have little brothers or little sisters. Anybody? Little brothers or little sisters? Okay, young ones? You do not hand them the car keys and say, hey, go to the store, here's $10, buy whatever you want. That's ridiculous. We would never do that, right? We would never do that. Why? Too much freedom. They will not be able to handle that freedom. But the same thing happens to you and I. If someone gave you $1 million right now, what would you do with it? Some of you are already there. Like, yeah, I can see the car I'm driving, the clothes I'm wearing, the places I'm going to, all the stuff that I'm buying, you're already there. How many stories? I don't know if you guys have ever checked this stuff out, but lottery winners, how many of them have filed bankruptcy because they get their millions of dollars and you think, well, hey, you're going to be set, man, for the rest of your life. They get their millions and they blow it and totally mess up their lives. And we all think, well, I wouldn't do that. Please. How many people have done that? Too much freedom. Right? Too much freedom. So what he's doing here is he's teaching these people, the Israelites, God is teaching them how to properly use the freedom, the brand new freedom that they have. It's only 2 or 3 months old, how to operate. It's like teaching a little baby, a newborn, how to crawl, how to walk, as they're growing. You're teaching them along the way. So the people all submit. Verse 8. Now verse 9 says, and the Lord said to Moses, behold, I come to you again. He's establishing the leadership. Let's move on to our fourth section, which is Come on, where are you at? Alerting the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes. So what he does here in alerting the people, the first thing he says is set them apart. That's what the word consecrate means. Verse 10. The Lord tells Moses, go back down to the people again and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Consecrate means to sanctify or to set them apart. Now, what this means is, you know what, let me read verses 10 and 11 together. Then the Lord said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Let them wash their clothes and let them be ready for the third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. So, God is coming to meet the people. So he's telling them, I want you to be ready, set apart. Go to the people, consecrate them, set them apart today and tomorrow, let them wash their clothes. Why wash their clothes? With this, just because they stunk? I mean, man, they've been camping for 2-3 months. Isn't that kind of stinky? Well, that's not it. He wants the people to be totally, completely prepared. He wants them to understand the seriousness of what they're about to do, what they're about to experience. They're about to meet with God at that mountain, and they need to be totally and completely prepared. The inside and the outside. Go to the people, consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes. So get yourselves ready. Verse 11. And let them be ready for the third day. For on the third day, the Lord will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. So God is coming. Get yourselves ready. Right now, all of you are spending a whole bunch of time at home. Doing your online schooling. And there are times when you're home alone, probably. Mom and dad go to work, or else somebody's at work and the other parent leaves for the day, or they've got to go run errands, or they got to do whatever. And what do? They tell you, listen, make sure that you get your work done. And then when you're done with that, make sure that you get the house cleaned. Okay, get yourself cleaned up. And what do? You sit down, you're in your PJs, you haven't even brushed your teeth, it's like 1 o'clock and you're still like all bummy, you finally finish your work. And then you're supposed to clean the house, but what do? Well, hungry, I'm going to go get a sandwich. So you go in and you make your sandwich. And then what do? You go back to your computer and get on YouTube. And you start looking up your favorite anime. Or you start looking up, how to trim a dog's nails, or how do and you start looking at all these videos. You know how you do, like you get caught up, like, oh, look at this next one, this was so funny, you watch it, oh my goodness, oh, you know what, I need to know how to get through that, that next level on my video game. So then you look up one of those, and you look up all these tutorials, and how to whatever it is, you're looking up all this stuff. And then all of a sudden you realize, you notice the little clock on your computer, and you realize, oh my goodness, mom or dad or both, whatever, the family's going to be home in a little while. I was supposed to have done X, Y, Z, and I've only done X. So what you do is you begin to rush around. You're vacuuming, you're cleaning things up, straightening up, scrub the toilet, whatever they told you to do. And then you're still, it's like 3 o'clock, you're still in your PJs. So you got to go run in, you got to go change, get cleaned up, finally brush your teeth after you ate your sandwich. And, you're getting yourself ready. Because you know that the coming of your parents, your mom or your dad or both, that it is imminent. Like they're on their way. And this is serious. If I don't have this stuff done, I'm going to pay for it. So the same idea. God says, I'm coming on the third day. Get yourselves ready. This is a serious meeting. This is not something to be taken lightly. Consecrate yourselves. Set yourselves apart. Be ready. He wants them to understand that He is coming, and in order to meet with Him, they ought to take the meeting seriously. So, wonderful lesson for you and I. Wonderful lesson. Let me ask you a question. How serious do you take meeting with God? How serious do you take meeting with God? This is the point of the study where you get to evaluate yourself. I don't want you to answer out loud. You evaluate yourself. First, you must ask yourself, well, when do I meet with God? Do you meet with God on a daily basis? Like, in other words, do you open the Bible every day and read a little bit? Or is Sunday morning pretty much, that's it. I just want to hear the Bible, that's it. What do you do to prepare for that? What do you do to prepare for a Sunday morning going to meet with God through His Word in worship? What do you do for a Wednesday night going to meet with God through worship and in His Word? How do you prepare? You've got to answer that yourself. How serious is it? You can take it serious or not take it serious. That's none of my business. That's between you and God. If you take it serious, then you're going to do things in preparation for that. If it's not a serious thing to you, then you're not going to prepare. So that's the idea here. God is trying to get them to understand that when we meet, it needs to be taken seriously. So set them apart. But the next thing He does in verse 12 is He tells Moses, you got to set a boundary. You shall set bounds for the people all around. Oh, back into slavery. Here we go. Saved him out of slavery, gave him freedom. Now he's setting up bounds again. No. The boundaries are set for their own safety. You're going to see that in just a moment. We have some boundaries right now. Walls. Can you hear the kids playing outside? Hear that? What are they doing to those little kids, right? If we did not have the walls, if we just had a patio or we're just out in the open, you're having a hard enough time concentrating right now. Imagine if we didn't have walls. You'd hear kids screaming. You'd hear motorcycles going by on the freeway right here on Scott Road. You'd hear cars coming in and out of the parking lot, people walking by, dogs barking, birds chirping, whatever it is. So the boundaries that we have set up are not only to keep those screaming little kids out, but also to keep us in, to keep us safe. So the boundaries are a good thing. And He tells them in verse 12, you shall set bounds for the people all around. All around what? All around the mountain. And tell them this in verse 12. Take heed to yourselves. Be careful that you do not go up to the mountain or touch its base even. Don't even touch the mountain. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely be put to death. That's pretty serious. Right? It's pretty serious. Like when you get something new, and your brother or your sister comes into the room like, oh, you got something new. What do you say? Touch it and die. Right? I will kill you. Literally. Right? You get so serious. This is a big deal. God says, listen, if you touch it, you're going to be put to death. Don't touch the mountain. Verse 13, not a hand shall touch him, but he shall surely be stoned or shot with an arrow. You know what He just said in verse 13? What He's saying is this. Because notice He says, not a hand shall touch him. What? Here's the deal. The mountain is there. God and Moses are up there talking. And somebody down below was told, don't touch the mountain. There's a boundary. Don't touch the mountain. But he or she decides, oh, I got to get some of this dirt because God and Moses are meeting on this mountain. I got to get some dirt and I got to do what? Sell it on eBay. Right? So you reach over and you grab some dirt. What God is saying is, in verse 13, do not touch that individual. That individual has, it's a guy, right? Because guys always do what they're not supposed to. So they grab some dirt. God says, do not touch that individual. But, in verse 13, not a hand shall touch him, that individual. But he shall surely be stoned or shot with an arrow. Whether man or beast, he shall not live. That individual reaches over the boundary, crosses the boundary, grabs some dirt. You are not allowed to go over and touch him. What you do is you take rocks and you stone that person. You throw rocks at him to kill that individual. Or from a distance, you shoot an arrow at the individual and you kill that individual. Go, what? That's what God said? Yeah. Some people don't like that. Like, oh, no, man, that's not, why, God would not operate that. That can't be true. That can't be real. No, you don't understand. He's giving a warning. He's giving a warning. Like, this is how serious it is, man. Not a hand shall touch him, but he shall surely be stoned or shot with an arrow, whether it's a person or beast, a man or beast, person or animal. Even if you're animal, like you're out there standing at the base of the mountain and you look over and you see your favorite donkey crossing over the boundary. You do not go run and grab that donkey. What you do is you take an arrow and you shoot it from a distance, or you pick up rocks and you kill that donkey. You don't go touch it. Okay? He shall not live. In verse 13 at the end, when the trumpet sounds long, they shall come near the mountain. Now, let me say something real quickly. The trumpet, I do not know if that is the people are playing a trumpet to announce the coming of God, or if there are angels that are showing up and they're blowing trumpets, which happens in the Bible, throughout the Bible. I'm not really sure who that is. Nevertheless, when they hear the trumpet, come close to the mountain, but don't come too close. Verse 14, so Moses went down from the mountain again, here he goes, to the people, and sanctified the people. And they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, be ready for the third day. Check this out. Do not come near your wives. What? Yeah. Because you know how sinful wives are, right? That's not what he means. What he means is there should not be any kind of sexual relations between you and between the spouses. This is how serious we're talking here. Don't come near your wife for the next couple of days. Because on the third day, you're going to meet with God. And you go, why would he do that? I'm glad that you asked. I'll tell you. You don't have to turn here, but in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, Paul said this to the Corinthians. He said, do not deprive one another. He's talking to married couples. And he says, do not deprive one another. In other words, don't withhold yourself from your spouse, except with consent. So it's got to be from both of you for a time. So it's got to be a time limit. So a husband and wife are to give themselves to one another. The only time they can withhold from one another is when the two of them agree, and it must be for a set time. You got to decide the time. Now you go, well, why would you do that? Well, I'm glad that you asked, because I'm about to tell you that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer. That's why. So that you can completely, totally, 100% focus on God for that time. So keep yourself out of those kinds of relationships for the time being to prepare to meet God. That's what we're learning in Exodus chapter 19. So separate yourself, set some boundaries, be ready, be prepared, get ready to meet God. This is the whole point of Weekend of Worship that we did earlier this year. This is the whole point of summer camps, is to take some time away from family and friends, go up to a mountain, or go to a lake, or go to a camp, or go to the beach, or wherever, and you take that time, separate from everything that you normally would have going on, and you just spend that time with God. That's why some of you have been so profoundly impacted at camps. That's why it's special to you. Some of you can still remember. Like, oh, I remember the last, Weekend of Worship. Or I remember summer camp, back when we used to be able to do camps. I remember that. And the reason you remember that is because God impacted your heart there, because you separated from everything else for a short time and you just met with him. So he had your attention. I remember summer camp, last year, summer camp, when we went up to the mountains. Some of you will remember that. We had some incredible times of worship. Many of you were baptized at that camp. Remember that? We had a fantastic time there because you separated yourself for a time. Maybe you even had a boyfriend or girlfriend that stayed, and you went up, and you met with God, and it was a sweet time. Sweet time. That's the idea. Okay? Now, let's move on to our fifth and final section. We'll finish this thing up. Verse 16. Then it came to pass on the third day, in the morning, that there were thunderings and lightnings, and a thick cloud on the mountain, and the sound of the trumpet was very loud, so that all the people who were in the camp trembled. They're seeing all of this, hearing all of this, and they're terrified. Verse 17. And Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain, but boy, you better keep your hands off. 18. Now Mount Sinai was completely in smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace. And the whole mountain quaked greatly. Some translations say, and the whole congregation of people quaked greatly. Whatever it was, whether the mountain or the people or both, everybody's shaking. This is a serious deal here. Verse 19, and when the blast of the trumpet sounded long and became louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him by voice. So the first thing that we see in this section is that God descends upon Mount Sinai. And he does it in a big way. You know, God could come in whatever form he wanted to. He showed up. When the first time that he spoke to Moses, he was in a burning bush. There was none of this. But this time, this is how he chooses to come. Okay? Verse 20. Then the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain. And the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. So here's poor Moses again. Come up, go down. Come up, go down. Come up, go down. Come back up. And the Lord said to Moses in verse 21, go down and warn the people, lest they break through to gaze at the Lord, and many of them perish. So now he's telling them, okay, I want you to come on up. Okay, now what I want you to do is go back down and go warn the people. Warn the people. Okay, he's giving him directions. God directs Moses here. What he's telling him is, go down and warn the people, because the people are close to the mountain. And can you imagine if we said, well, listen, the Bible says that God is going to be on this mountain back over here behind us. It would be terrifying, but many of us would be kind of like in that spot where, you know, this is scary, but if I can catch a glimpse of God, like, you know, maybe get a picture of him and prove to everybody that he really does exist. And so there's kind of like that, you know, maybe I should go. And God tells Moses, you better warn them, do not break through. Do not come up this mountain. If they do, verse 21, many of them will perish. Many will die. Verse 22, also, let the priests who come near the Lord, in other words, the priests who serve God, let them consecrate themselves. Let them prepare themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. So it's a serious deal. But Moses said to the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you warned us, saying, set bounds around the mountain and consecrate it. Then the Lord answered, said to him, away, get down. Look at this, here it is again. He came up and down, and now he tells him again, come on up. Okay, now go back down. And here's what he says in verse 24. Get down and then come up. You and Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he, that's God, break out against them. And many of them die. Verse 25, so Moses went down to the people and spoke to them. Now, the account is not over yet. We're part of the way through it. But the point here is that God is establishing leadership. This is my spokesperson, is the point that he's trying to make to the children of Israel. Moses is the leader. This is the one that I'm speaking to. He's teaching them. What this is this is the picture of a good dad training his kids. What has your dad taught you to do? Teach you how to tie your shoes? It's a good thing. Or did he teach you that, just get some slip-ons? Still training, Did he teach you, or is he teaching you? I know that some of you, this is true, he's teaching you how to drive. It's important. That's very important to me. Especially if you and I are on the road at the same time. Very important to me. What has he trained you how to do? Did he train you how to brush your teeth? Did he potty train you? Did he train you on how to make something? How to fix something? Those are things that a good dad does. My girls know how to change their own brakes. Get out here. I'm not changing your brakes for you. I'll show you how to do it. Let's go. I'm going to do this side, you do the other side. They did their own brakes. What does your dad teach you how to do? This is what a good dad does. A good dad will train his kids for them to be successful. Some of us look at this. Lots of people have looked at this and they thought, man, God is so harsh. And he's, fire and, smoke. And he's just threatening people. What he's doing is he's training his kids in how to be successful with the freedom that he has given them and how to be successful once they get into the promised land. This is not just done haphazardly and just just willy-nilly, now you have your freedom, just go on out there and live it all up. Because we would ruin ourselves with too much freedom. So there must be boundaries. We must understand that there's some instructions that we need to follow in order to be successful. That's what God's doing. That's what God's doing. Now, if you don't have a dad that has taught you or is teaching you how to do things, I got some good news for you. God said that he will be a father to the fatherless. In other words, if you don't have an earthly dad at home teaching you, training you how to do those things, good news. God wants to be your dad. Now, he may not teach you how to tie your shoes. You already know how to do that. Or you know how to go buy some slip-ons or flip-flops. But God can direct you. He can train you. He can teach you how to navigate life, how to be successful with the freedom that you have in Jesus, how to not blow it, how to not ruin it. He can train you in those things if you will commit yourself to spending time with him. Daily basis. Pick up my Bible. Spend a few minutes every day reading it. Proverbs. Here's what it says. And you get in there and you learn wisdom. God will train your heart. Some people read this, they get so angry, how could God be so harsh? What they fail to realize is that, listen, for the last 18, this is the 19th chapter. For the last 18 chapters, God saved them out of Egypt, out of slavery. When they were hungry, he fed them. When they were thirsty, he gave them water. He's directed them out of harm and into safety. God is a wonderful Father. At this point in this chapter, he's setting up these boundaries, so extremely important for us.